Well, good afternoon, folks, and welcome back to the farm. It's an absolutely gorgeous afternoon here. In fact, I don't even know what the temperature is, but it's beautiful. I don't even need a coat on right now. It's a far cry from what it was the other day when it was like minus 14 here. Anyways, the fellas here, they're getting some leftover pumpkins for their snacks. We were able to get some from a few folks in town that had extra ones that they just hadn't even carved them up. They were just for decoration sitting on the front porch. So it's a nice little treat for these boys in a year where, I mean, as you can see, things are pretty sparse to begin with. And we're now getting towards feed and hay and everything for the winter. So a little tasty treat goes a long way to keeping morale up around the farm. In other exciting news, Brennan's here right now. He's got his skid steer over there and he's just working with the transit to get everything leveled. Gravel's coming in. It was actually supposed to be here yesterday, but it's coming today. He's gonna get that gravel pad done. And then he's also gonna move a little bit of dirt over in front of our one waterer that we have, where it just kind of keeps sinking into the abyss. So I'm gonna get him to build that up with a little bit of clay. Hopefully we don't lose it over the winter. It was tilting down and spilling over. So the fact that the ground was wet was actually compounding the problem. So we get it jacked up, we'll get it built up, and then hopefully the bulls can pack that clay down a little bit harder and we don't have to deal with those issues. Well, so much for yesterday's nice weather. It's now like 4 degrees out and raining. But the good news is the gravel pad is done. It's actually pretty, like, really nice and level. So we didn't have to add a whole bunch. There's a little bit of a deep spot over there where it kind of dropped off the corner. And once the barn is up, we're going to shave a lot of that gravel off. We're going to reclaim it and use it to help slope and drainage a little bit around the building itself. We don't need to have as much here as what we currently have laying on the ground. But Brennan was able to take his bobcat over, and some of the dirt that he'd stripped off, for the most part it's piled up here. In the spring we're actually going to land spread it, till it up with a rototiller, and then just spread it, get it reseeded back to grass. And then this evening what I have to do is get this section of fence that I actually took down for him to actually be able to get through here. If we get that section of fence put back up and get the horses put back in the horse pasture here, because currently right now they're down here with the bulls, and ordinarily that wouldn't be a problem, but I mean, we're feeding the bulls some real expensive hay, and there's still grass for them to eat here, so they can come back in here and clean up this little bit of grass, and they don't need to go eat $200 bales by any means. So this is the water here. This front end was basically sinking out of sight, and I put a bunch of field stone right in front to, I guess, give it a bit of a foundation to stop it just sinking into the abyss. And then he was able to put some soil up in here, and then I'll eventually put a little bit of gravel in there and make it nice. But this is really just a temporary fix until the ground freezes. And well, this wooden platform was a temporary fix like 4 years ago. But I've never come back and revisited. We fully intended to actually put a concrete pad right there. And just, you know what, sometimes the day gets away on you, and sometimes a decade gets away on you. So it's important to come back and revisit projects like this. Make sure it is done properly. As I mentioned yesterday, we've been feeding a ton of pumpkins to our sheep, and so we got some pumpkins from town. Actually, a lady had like 9 of them, and there was these 3 fancy ones that I've kept back, keeping the best for last, right? But what I'm thinking with these ones, because they are, they're pretty, let's have a look at this one, pretty unique looking, right? Kind of interesting. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to save the seeds out of these ones, especially these. That's extraordinary. So what I'm going to try and do is try and grow some of those pumpkins. I don't know how well they'll do in our climate, but I just thought it was kind of cool anyways, and maybe we'll get some interesting hybrids. But the sheep, the rams for sure, they've been pretty much living off of pumpkins here for the last week anyways, since Halloween. And no complaints from these boys. As you can see, there's a few little bits left on the ground. That's about it. but they just lick these things right up. And the beautiful thing about pumpkins is very high in fiber, very high in vitamin C. The pumpkin seeds is a natural organic dewormer. So I mean, it's one of those things where it's a treat, but it's a treat you can eat every day kind of thing, and it has tons of health benefits. So pretty good time of year for the boys here. They're having the time of their life. Anyways, I got a couple of regular pumpkins left, and I thought I mean, it is supper time, right? So I'll toss one across the fence for the boys, and you can see just how much they really love this stuff, because it's it's no joke. They take it seriously. This is all about snack time for the boys. So here goes nothing. So you can see they do not hesitate. They got that thing quick. They get all the seeds and then they just go right at it. And they'll eat at this until there's absolutely nothing left. It's pretty interesting to see how much they love just straight raw pumpkin like that. And this one broke apart because I put a little cut in it to help it break apart. But if I'd actually just tossed it in whole with no weak spots in it, they would kick that thing around this field like a little soccer ball until they broke it open, and then they just destroy the thing. So I think it's official. I think the fellas want me to grow some more pumpkins next year. So we're gonna save a bunch of seeds and save some of the fancy seeds too, because that'll be interesting. And we're gonna grow way more. We had, I think, what do we have? We had like 25 pumpkins that we grew this year, and then we got the 9 that were given to us. So I don't know. What's it gonna hurt? Let's see if we can't grow 100 pumpkins, because they're not gonna go to waste. The sheep, the pigs, the chickens, everybody loves pumpkins. Not to mention, I do enjoy a good pumpkin pie. All right, well, now the dogs, the cats, everybody's fed. We've all had supper. The whole household's tucked up in bed. It's time to do some magic with some of these pumpkins. If we're gonna save some to grow next year, especially something fancy like these, I was reading on gardeningknowhow.com that if you wanna save some seeds, it's real easy. Just cut one of these open, scoop it all out, and there's gonna be more seeds in a pumpkin than you can plant. And I thought, well, that's more like a dare than an observation. And when you're like us and you have like a 1/4 of an acre garden, you know, one pumpkin's worth of seeds just isn't gonna cut it. So I do have a very sharp knife here that we use for butchering chickens. Thought, well, that would be fantastic for getting in a pumpkin like this. It's got some pretty aggressive features, so I have to assume that conventional cutting that you would typically do on a pumpkin is maybe going to be a little bit more challenging. So with this one in particular, you can see I flipped it upside down a couple times, and it looks a little bit riper on the bottom. So safe to say it's going to be a little bit softer on this side. And so I'm just going to come in and cut out the bottom like you typically would the top of a pumpkin instead. So doing things a little bit in reverse, and then just pop that cap out, and you can see there's literally probably hundreds of seeds, and that's amazing. That's awesome. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm going to separate these seeds and get, I'll probably get 50 to 75 out of this one pumpkin alone. So with a pumpkin like this, it's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit harder to reach into. What it is, I just put a slit down each side, and I can actually just crack the pumpkin open like that and be able to easily reach in there and scoop all those seeds out. Just like that, and done. And the rest is sheep treats. Now, I'm not gonna feed the sheep this tonight because they've already had 2 pumpkins today. Now, when I mentioned earlier, this is the treat that kind of keeps on giving, I guess, right? You can give this quite frequently without, too much of a consequence. It is a natural dewormer, as I said, but keep in mind this also can act, if you eat a lot of it, can act as a natural laxative. Now, sheep do have a fairly delicate rumen, and we don't really want to upset the balance. So, you know, 1 or 2 pumpkins a day, not an issue. Half a dozen pumpkins a day, yeah, you're probably going to end up with some diarrhea. And if you get any more than that, well, then you may end up actually having some serious digestive upsets in your sheep. And as you're probably aware, a digestive upset in a sheep can sometimes lead to a dead sheep. So everything, just like humans, right? Everything in moderation. So with this, you know, bundt cake looking little pumpkin, really flat and round. Not really sure how to tackle this one, so I'm just gonna slit it right down the middle like this and open it up like a bagel. And I don't know if that's the right way to do it or not, but it seems like the easiest way to me. And then fold it open, and then you got access. Looks just beautiful, right? But the inside quite a bit different looking. And you know what? I'm just gonna dump all these seeds in the same pail. And the reason for that is because the pumpkin patch is gonna be really interesting next year. And I'm not looking for any kind of purebreds. I'm just looking for interesting. So we'll save all these seeds. If we can grow some really interesting looking pumpkins, maybe we'll get some really interesting tasting pumpkins. And you know, if something's got a little bit extra character on the farm, I'm fine with that. We don't really eat a whole bunch of pumpkin, but they sure do add a lot of character and a lot of fun to the farm. And we got a lot of extra garden space usually. We definitely had lots of extra garden space this year. So, I mean, I don't want to leave the ground uncovered. The ground uncovered, that usually is all it's kind of a recipe for growing weeds, right? If you leave the ground uncovered. So you might as well plant something that brings a smile to your face, even if you're not going to eat it. But this does provide a valuable feed source for, as I mentioned earlier, the pigs, the chickens, the sheep. And you know, for the couple minutes here that we take just to harvest a couple of seeds, not really a pile of work. So already in my bucket, I've probably got, if I were to hazard a guess, probably close to 250 seeds out of 2 pumpkins, and a handful here that have fallen out on the ground. Now, what am I gonna do to deal with that, right? I got a whole mess of seeds plugged up inside there. Same with this, right? This seeds upon seeds upon seeds, all trapped in the pumpkin meat. Well, I'm just gonna take and dump this in a salad spinner. I'll rinse it underneath the sink in some cool water. And of course this pumpkin meat's gonna slide right off, and will just leave me with the seeds in the bottom of the colander. And once that's done, I will lay these flat on a paper towel, and they're gonna sit there and dry overnight. And then from there, I'm gonna move those seeds. I'm gonna bring them into the shop here, into a cool, I shouldn't say dark necessarily, but low light kind of area. And they're gonna stay there for about 10 days. Now after that, the seeds should have gone, they've dried enough, they've gone dormant. And from there, I'm going to select the plumpest looking seeds, the biggest looking seeds, because they have the greatest chance of germination. And I will keep those ones in a brown paper envelope in our cold room in the house until next spring, until it's time to plant. So it's interesting, this kind of pinkish, I don't know if you call this pink or salmon looking pumpkin, the skin on this pumpkin is like, it's like body armor. It's incredibly hard to get even the sharpest knife through here. And so that's why it is so very important to have a very sharp knife, because dull knives, I mean, you just got to do more work, and the more work you have to do with a knife, the greater chance you have of slipping, having a mishap, and mishaps usually lead to trips to the hospital. And nobody's a big fan of that. Oh, wow. There you go. Break that one open. That's what that one looks like on the inside. Not as many seeds readily visible, but the ones that are there have a very, very thick seed. Kind of interesting. So we'll save some of those as well. And we're gonna have all kinds of interesting pumpkins next year. This one has kind of an interesting smell to it too. It smells more like a squash. It doesn't have the fruity smell to it that you know, I guess a more traditional round pumpkin would have. You know, it kind of has that sweet pumpkin-y smell that we're all so familiar with. And this big thick green one here, this had a real, almost like a cantaloupe, like a really creamy, kind of not too sweet, but you could definitely tell there's a lot of flavor here. So if we were to grow some of these next year, you know, if we're fortunate enough that the Lord provides and some of these do grow, I think something like this would be very interesting to process into things like soups and stews, because I think that's going to have a ton of flavor. But anyways, that's pretty much all the seeds we're going to save here for this year. I'm still getting a few more handfuls here. And whatever's left for seeds in there, I'm going to leave outside the shop tonight. They'll freeze overnight, and well, I think it's going to freeze tonight. But any of these last little bits of seeds or something like that, the chickens will peck them, and they'll be great for the chickens too, because they're just as fortunate as a natural dewormer for the chickens as they are for the sheep. And then all the meat that's left can go to the chicken, or to the sheep and the pigs tomorrow. Well, now I guess it's time to run to the house, fetch up a cup of tea, and wash me some pumpkin seeds. So I'll let you go for now. I hope you have a fantastic evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.